Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone as we're preparing for Shabbat Parshat Chayei. Parshat Chayei, we find ourselves with Sarah being nifter, and Abraham Avinu is coming to bury her. Abraham Avinu comes to the people over there. He talks to the Bnei Het and he tells them, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem, tenu li achuzat kever imachem, ve'ekparat bentim lefanai. He says, listen, I'm a alien and a resident amongst you. Please give me a grave so I can bury my dead. And the Bnei Het answer very generously, V'ya'anu Bnei Het Avraham le'mor lo, Shema'enu, Adoni nesi Elohim ata betochenu, b'mucha kevarenu kevorot metecha, ish b'meinu et kivro, lo yicham imecha mikvor metecha. Anything you want, take it. It's all yours. Whatever grave you want, it's all for you. So far Abraham never mentioned money. Bnei Het answer, take it. No one answered anything about money. But Yakom Abraham, he bows down, everything's good. And he says, if you really want to give it to me, and then he says, full amount of money, full price. Not wholesale price, full price, he says. Give it to me, full price, so I can take it as a holding, so I can bury my dead as a grave over there. The question is, Avraham Avinu says, give me a grave. They say, no problem. And Avraham Avinu then wakes up and says, you know what, let me pay you. No one spoke about money. Why is Avraham Avinu all of a sudden bringing something about money? And so, I saw a story brought down in the Parshat parables of Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky. He says that Napoleon once had 3 officers in his army who were very instrumental in a great victory. There was a Prussian, an Austrian, and a Jew. 3 generals. He called them into his throne room and he gave them lots of praise. He showered them with praise. And then he said to them, ask me any request, anything that you want, and it shall be yours. So the Prussian said, please make me the king of Prussia. The Austrian said, make me the king of Austria. And when he turned to the Jew said, give me a barrel of herring. I want a barrel of fish. After they left the room, the 2 generals turned to the Jew and said to him, a barrel of fish, a barrel of herring? That's all you could think to ask from the Emperor Napoleon? The Jew smiled and said, you see, a barrel of herring, that I know Napoleon will definitely give me. Making me king of somewhere, I don't know if he's going to do that. Abraham Avinu said, give me the field. All of a sudden he sees them saying, sure. He says there's something, it's not real. It's not real. The offer is too good to be true. If it's an offer too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So Avraham Avinu says, Kesef Maleh, give me full price. I really want it. I don't want to have problems later on. I want a full price. That's what Avraham Avinu introduced the money into here. Avraham Avinu wanted to say, I want this deal done. We have a concept, Pirkei Avot tells us about tzaddikim, emor me'at v'aseh harbeh. Tzaddikim are those who say a little bit and do a lot. On the opposite side is Rashaim. They say a lot and they do a little. Right? You ever sit around a couple of people telling them about an idea? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. And then when it comes to the Ma'aseh Ta'achlit, nothing gets done. Oh, I can't do anything for you. Everything is done already. They already said it. And that was Ephron, Bnei Het, I'm going to do. Free. And then he took 400 silver shekels that were worth millions of dollars. But our tzaddikim, like Avraham Avinu, they don't do that. They say to the angels, I'll give you a little bit of food, a little bit of this, that, and they go and they bring a whole table set. They say over a story, there was a small hamlet of, I don't know how to pronounce this, it was in Poland, Zuchowicz. Well, it was a hamlet near the town of Mir. And they lived there a rabbi, a very righteous man, by the name of Rabbi Yeshaya. He was a wealthy man, and he was known for his achnasat orchim. One Friday afternoon, there were some merchants that were traveling back from a fair, and they ended up in this hamlet near Mir. When Rabbi Yeshaya saw them, he ran out to greet them. He said, "Come to my house for Shabbat." They were so excited. They came into his house. Baruch Hashem, they found somewhere to keep Shabbat. And all of a sudden, he turns to them and he says, "In order to spend Shabbat in my house, each one of you have to give me 5 golden coins." What? This is Achnasat Orchim? This is how a Jew does Achnasat Orchim? He charges 5 golden coins, but they had no choice. They had nowhere else to go for Shabbat. And so they each gave him 5 golden coins. They enjoyed Shabbat immensely. They kept saying, "Bring out more wine, bring out more fish. We want to eat. Give us more drink. Give us more food." And he gave them everything that they wanted. He kept bringing out food, drink, everything that they wanted. And Sunday morning, as these merchants are getting ready to go, and he came over and he said, "I want to give you back, each of you, your 5 golden coins." And they said, "What do you mean? We paid you for Shabbat." He said, No. I never would take money from you for Achnasat Orchim. But rather what? I didn't want you to feel like a chesed case, that I was giving you something for free. I wanted you to feel like a boss. I wanted you to really enjoy your Shabbat. I paid for it. Give me more food. Give me more eat. Give me more drink. So I took your coins to make you feel that way. But really, I never had the intention to take your money for Achnasat Orchim. This is someone who's emor me'at v'aseh arbeh. Give me a little bit, I'm going, and I'll give you everything you need. This is something that we have to take with us. Don't be like Ephron. Don't give people offers that are too good to be true. Do something for serious. Say a little bit, do more. Just on the side, I once heard what it means emor me'at v'aseh arbeh. Right now, at this time, I forget where I read it. But the rabbi there said, that means dealing with your children. What does that mean? Speak less to your children to do things, and you do it yourself. You heard this one also? Just this week. You heard this week? Just this week. This is the Shema. Right? So it's a concept. And everything in life. Don't talk too much. Go ahead and do it. That's what needs to get done. This is on Ephron and Avraham. Now, as the Parshat continues, the famous part of the Parashat is that Avraham sends his Eved Eliezer to go get a shidduch for Yitzchak. And everybody knows that Eliezer says to Avraham Avinu, "Why don't you, Yitzchak, marry my daughter?" And Abraham's answer, as brought down in Rashi, he tells Eliezer straight up, "Ata arur, you're cursed. You're cursed. Your daughter cannot marry my son who's Baruch, who's blessed." Chazal tell us, though, after this whole incident, after this whole time Eliezer went and took care of the whole shidduch, and he came back, Chazal tells that Eliezer was Yotza Mechlal Arur. He came out from being Arur and he became Baruch. He was from Canaan. Correct? He's Nimrod's son. Okay, he's Nimrod's son. He's Arur. So now, the Chazal tells us that after this whole incident of getting Rivka, he became Baruch. Now we have to stop and think for a second. What did Eliezer do to go from being cursed to becoming blessed? The Rosh Hashiva Rav Reisman Shlita tells us a story that happened with the Hafetz Chaim and Rav Meir Shapiro. The Hafetz Chaim was invited to speak at a gathering and he couldn't make it. He was an older man, couldn't go, and so he prepared a speech and he gave it to Rav Meir Shapiro to go present it instead of him. Rav Meir Shapiro gets to the gathering. And the people at the gathering, the administrators, now have a question, what to do. If the Hafetz Chaim was here, he would speak first. He was the elder sage and a Kohen, so he would speak first. But now that Rav Meir Shapiro was representing him, should he speak first or should he speak later on if he would be speaking that way we would put him? So that was the question they had. So Rav Meir Shapiro said, I want to speak last. They said, but you represent the Havetz Chaim. Rav Meir Shapiro said as follows. He said we have a concept, Shlucho shel Adam kemoto. That a shliach of a person, someone's agent, is like himself. He said, my job, my agency, my shlichus, is to say the speech for the Havetz Chaim. All the time that I still didn't finish my job, I'm like the Havetz Chaim. I want to be like the Havetz Chaim for the longest possible. Therefore, let me speak last, so all this time I could be like the Havetz Chaim. Rav Reisman says, he asks a riddle on this week's Parashah. The riddle, who can answer this riddle? Listen to this riddle. How many times, if you know the answer already from before, you can't answer it. You have to really, first time hearing this riddle. How many times does the name Eliezer appear in this week's Parashah? If you don't know, take a guess. If you take a guess, 5 times, 10 times.
I just heard it just now.
How many times is and if you ask this question,
It's about 4 or 5 times.
if you ask this question on the Shabbat table, you're going to get different answers. People are going to say like this, people are going to say like that. But the truth is,
4 or 5 times.
Eliezer's name is not mentioned once. B'chlal, 0 times in this week's parasha.
0 times?
0 times. Even though he's the main person in this parasha, his name is not mentioned once. Every time the Torah wants to say Eliezer, it calls him Eved Avraham. Eved Avraham. Why does it call him Eved Avraham? Eliezer was doing the shlichut of Avraham Avinu. That means that whole time, who was he? He was Avraham. He was a shliach of Avraham, so he became Avraham. He's Eved Avraham. He wasn't Eliezer. When a person raises himself to a level where he's looking to be someone better and behaves that way long enough, can go from Arur to Baruch. And this is a story that I've told over many times, and I got it from here, from Rav Reisman. Rav Reisman talks about a peasant, a commoner, who wanted to marry the princess. And he knew that he could never marry the princess. He wasn't royal. He had a face of an ordinary person. And he heard about a master mask maker. And he went to the master mask maker and he said, make for me a mask of nobility. I want to look like a noble person. And so they made it for him the mask of nobility, the face of importance, the face of wealth, prestige. And the mask maker gave him the mask and he was able to put it on and he was able to court the princess and eventually marry her. For many years, he did not take off that mask. He walked everywhere with it. One day, an old friend came by to visit him. And the old friend started to talk with him. And then the old friend said, how did your face change? And he said, I'll tell you a secret. I'm wearing a mask. He said, you're wearing a mask? You liar, shakran. How could you do that? Why are you embarrassed who you are? And he jumps on his friend and starts to pull it off. He rips off the mask off the face of his friend and then he gasps. He starts to shriek. Because underneath the mask, his own natural face turned into the face which was identical to the face on the mask. His face, his real face, became the mask. The point of the story is that if you put on a mask of something greater than you for a long time, you aspire to be something that you're not right now, you'll get there. Rav Avigdor Miller, Zechat Tzadik L'Bracha, would say when he was in the Slobodki Yeshiva, he was in a Musarvad. They met once a month to work on another midah or something. So one time they were talking what midah we're going to learn, we're going to work on ourselves this month. And one bacher said, we're going to do the midah of emet. And the way Rav Avigdor Miller said, there was one musarnik, one alta musarnik, one older Musar guy who said, Emes, cheap. Everybody works with Emet. He says this month we should serve Hashem with sheker. We should serve Hashem through sheker. How is this sheker? Let's pretend to be higher than we are. Let's pretend that we're something more. Because if we do it long enough, if you do something, you say L'Shem Shemayim, but you really don't mean it, right? I'm going to eat this burger L'Shem Shemayim. But if you say it long enough, and you do it long enough, it's going to become Emet. Rav Reisman, he's speaking to his Talmidim, and he's speaking to all of us. He says, I say the same thing to you, B'nai Torah, who have to go out to work. He says, keep the mask of a Ben Torah, keep the face of a Ben Torah. When you look in the mirror, instead of seeing a lawyer, a barber, a doctor, whatever it is, see yourself as a Ben Torah. We, Baruch Hashem, don't have to go from Arur to Baruch, like Eliezer. We just have to stay in Baruch. But remember, wherever we go, we should have the face of a Ben Torah. Even in your heart, if there's something that you like, something silly, you like to play video games, or you like the sports, something like that. Even if you're doing that, still keep the face of nobility. A lesson that we learn from Eliezer, Even Avraham. Now, no shir on Parshat Chayei is considered complete unless we have some sort of topic on Shidduchim. Right? The Chayei is known as the Shidduch Parsha. Right? So it'll behoove Shadchonim to go through the Parasha. In fact, he brings down here that the Rebbeinu Chayei writes that there used to be a custom that this Parasha would be read to a Hatan shortly before his wedding. They would read it to him. Because there's a lot of important steps that you have to learn from this Parasha. Before we go in, the Mashgiach of Torah V'dat, Rav Moshe Wolfson Shlita, asks a question. He says, the Parasha starts off with Sarah's death. And then it goes into marriage right away. So it's like having to get married. What's the connection? Why is it going from death to marriage? How do you understand that connection? And he says more. The Gemara in Kiddushin brings a Gezerah Shavah. It brings a linkage of words to teach a lesson. It says kicha, right? Kicha, taking. That means a person can marry a woman with kesef, with money, since it uses the word kicha when discussing marriage, and employs the term kicha when Avraham purchases the Marat HaMachpelah. And so again, we have a linkage between death, Sarah being buried, and we learn from there the same way Avraham Avinu bought it, he acquired it. The same lashon of kicha, you can also take a woman with money. What's the connection of death and marriage? It seems to be two opposites. So Rav Moshe Wolfson Shlita explains as follows. The world is created from four basic elements: fire, wind, water, and dust. Yerushalayim is said to be created from fire. Uve'esh ata atid livnota. And through fire you are destined to rebuild it. However, fire disintegrates more than any other basic elements, and thus Yerushalayim was destroyed. But Hebron, the home of Marat HaMachpelah, is built from afar, dust. Hence, the man from Avram purchased the cave. His name was Ephron. Afar. Dust does not change its essence. It's indestructible. This then is the deeper meaning of the whole story of the purchase of Marat HaMachpelah, as an introduction to Yitzchak's search for a wife. A marriage that is based on solid foundation is as indestructible as afar. It's supposed to last forever. That's the way a marriage is supposed to be. You know, married, even after death, you're still married. It's still together. It's afar. It's indestructible. It stays forever. We'll start off with a couple of advice the Rav Pam would give to people who are in the Parshat of Shidduchim, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes to discuss how that applies to us. Most of us here are already married. What do we do with those lessons? So we start off. Why did Avraham Avinu have to take a daughter from his own family? He had to go to his brother's kids to take. He had by him Aner, Eshkol, Mamre were right there. They were students of Abraham. They had children. Why didn't Abraham take their kids? They came from Canaan, son of Ham. And they had character traits in their family that wasn't good. Even though they believed in Hashem, yet the character trait, the midot of the family weren't good. Abraham's family, although they were not believing in Hashem, they had good character traits. Rabbeinu Bachya teaches us that one of the most highest priority in a shidduch is finding someone with good character traits. Someone who is a Bat Yisrael. Someone who is a Ben Yisrael. Someone who has midot. Because if you want to have Shalom Bayit, the first thing you need to do is to have people who know how to get along with each other. You need to have people with good character traits. When someone is nice, someone is pleasant, it's easier to get along with them. So the number one thing to look in a shidduch is a person, is he have midot. Sometimes person is told, oh, this girl is a big Baal Chesed, she helps, she does, perfect. Then he gets married to her and all of a sudden, he doesn't see it. Did everybody lie to him? Rav Pam would say no. Nobody lied to him. It's possible that he himself turned her into being not a person of Chesed anymore. If he was acting unkindly to her, talking with disrespect, disregarding her feelings, how then can he expect her to continue to be a Baal Midot? If he wants her to act with Midot, Tovot, he needs to act properly with her. Rabbeinu Bachya tells us another very important thing not to look like when you want to get married is to not to look for external beauty. But if you take a look at the Parshat, take a look at the Torah, it tells us Sarah, she was beautiful. Rivka, she was beautiful. Rachel, she was beautiful. No, it's talking about, it says Yafat Maretz, it's beautiful to look at. It means they were physically beautiful. So why tell me not to look for beauty? Rav Pam would say that beauty is like the number 0. If she has midot tovot and other good things, you put a 1, a 2, a 3 in front of it, it's going to become 10, 20, 30, can come 100. But if you don't have anything else with the beauty, then all that you have is a big fat 0. That beauty without other good character traits are not worth anything. He compares it to an etrog. An etrog, if it's nikiut, if it's clean, don't look at the shape. You look to make sure there's no dots on it. Beauty is the same thing. It's a desirable attribute only when it's an addition to good character traits. It's important to also know not to marry someone because of their money. Some people think, there's people, they come from money, they have money, that's what it's worth. The Hafetz Chaim when he was a youngster, when he was in Shidduchim, he was a very well-known person. And everyone wanted to make a Shidduch for him. They promised him large money, they promised him families that were very famous. The Hafetz Chaim didn't want any of those Shidduchim. He settled, what he called settled, He married the daughter of an almanah, of a widow. She couldn't read, she couldn't write. But he married her. And he told his son later on in years, all the Torah I have is because of her. Because I saw in her that she loved Torah. She wanted me to grow. That she would be Misirat Nefesh for me. That she would let me learn. I had to find someone who would let me be who I can be. When you look in life to marry someone, you don't look at money, you don't look at wealth, you don't look at beauty, you look at, can we grow together and build a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael together? Do we complement each other in that way? If not, then all that you're doing is causing heartache for everyone. You're wasting time. Some people, unfortunately, start their priorities. The first thing they think about, what are my friends going to say? I want to get a shidduch. It's the talk of the town. Oh, did you hear who he got engaged to? They want to have family. They want shaykhs. They want all these things. They wanted to be beautiful. That was Ahashverosh. He said, I have beautiful. I'm looking for beauty. We're not like that. Another misconception people have, they want to get someone, they're a Talmud Chacham, let's say there's someone in yeshiva learning. They say, I want to get a wife who I can talk, such great philosophical ideas. Rav Pam says, for that you have a chavuta in the Beit Midrash. With your wife, you're building a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. And that's what you have to look at. I have another thing that from Rav Pam, but before we get there, I want to bring another idea about Shidduchim. The Yalkut Shimoni asks, why Hashem did not create husband and wife as a pair from the start? If the two halves of a neshama, why do they have to be born separate and then find each other later? Be born together. The Yalkut Shimoni explains, Hashem saw that men would complain about their wives. And if they would have been created together, they would never appreciate their wife. I would be better off if I was single, he would think. So Hashem creates each person alone, and he makes them search for their mate so that he'll appreciate the marriage more. And when they're dating and they're going out and they're building up to getting married, they're planting the seeds for their marriage to succeed. Rav Pam would tell all the newlyweds, the most important thing to remember, the courtship, the dating that you did when you were engaged or just recently married, that must continue throughout all of your marriage. To create a happy marriage, we have to keep the courtship up. And so, Rav Reisman Shlita looks at a few ideas, and we'll look at two or three of them, and then we'll conclude. He says, what were some things that was happening during the dating period? Number one thing during the dating period, the girl and the boy were talking. They talked. You had what to talk about, and you had all day to talk about it, hours on end. Then they get married, and all of a sudden there's nothing to talk about anymore. Nobody has what to say. It's all down to business. How did this happen? It's because when they were first dating, they were excited. Everything was new. They had what to talk about. Rav Reisman says the same has to continue in marriage. He brings down from the Emet LeYaakov, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, another Rosh Hashiva of Torah Vadat, that writes, every man and every woman have to look at their husband and their wife, each one has to look at each other, as being the most wisest, most beautiful, and best person in the world. Again, the man must consider his wife the wisest, the most beautiful, the best woman in the world. This is from Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky adds in parentheses, it's a very hard thing to do. And he says it applies the same thing to the wife. But that's the way it's supposed to be done. We're supposed to listen to her as if she's the wisest person in the world. A person needs to go out. Why? Because especially for men, when they're in their house, they're in the usual thing, they cannot talk about other things. In order for a man to leave his bills and his day-to-day life, he has to go out somewhere else to have that type of conversation. Another thing that changes, Rav Reisman would say, is that spending. When they were dating, money wasn't an issue. Going fancy places, buying presents, getting gifts, everything was done. All of a sudden they got married, that's it, the wallet's closed, everything's closed, we can't afford now, can't buy now. And a person starts to ruin his marriage that way. It's important again to remember that although when you're first dating there's excitement, if you wish to maintain that feeling, you must continue to invest in your relationship. And your relationship means if a man and woman are successful, the Shekhinah comes down to them. And so doesn't it worth a couple of dollars to spend in order to have the Shekhinah between them? Those are two ideas that Reisman talks about of how we can apply ideas that happen during our shidduch dating into our marriage as well. What I want to end off with is another idea from Rav Pam about shidduchim. Sometimes a boy finds what he thinks is the perfect shidduch. He says the girl is the one who's supposed to be. And he feels that this is it. And then all of a sudden the girl doesn't agree and everything becomes gone. And he feels depressed. How could it be? He doesn't want to listen to any other shidduchim. Yet from the words of Eliezer, we see that this is an improper reaction. Eliezer had a mission and he had phenomenal success. He came there quickly. He met Rivka. He saw the water come up. She was from Avinu's family. She was extremely intelligent. She was very big Baalat Chesed. She was beautiful. He knew she would be perfect for Yitzchak. But when he spoke to Betuel and to Lavan, he said, now, if you tend to do kindness and truth with my master, tell me. And if not, tell me and I'll turn right or left. What did he mean right or left? Everything was right. Why is he saying I'm leaving? Rashi says this means I would go to the daughters of Ishmael or I'll go to the daughters of Lot. He accepted the possibility that Rivka would not be allowed to marry Yitzchak, and he said, I will have other plans. It's important to know that everything comes from the Yad Hashem, everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if someone in the relationship says, no, it's not going to work out, it's important not to fall into depression, and it's important not to give up, to continue to date. And a person shouldn't say, no, it has to be this one. We'll end off with the story the Gemara brings down. The Gemara tells us in Moed Katan, which we are learning in Shul every Shabbat, it says here that Rava heard a person, he heard a person praying and saying, Tizamin li planitab. Let so-and-so, certain woman be available for me. He wanted to marry a certain woman. He decided which woman was supposed to be his. So Rava said to him, Lo tebay rahmei hachi. Do not daven this way. If she's meant to for you, she will not go from you. But if not, if you're davening, then you will be coming to renounce Hashem, because you say you'll daven for her and it didn't happen and you'll be upset with Hashem. Or it means you will marry her and then you'll see it's not for you and you will hate her. So then he heard after the episode, Rava heard him say what? Either he dies before her, or she dies before him. If he wasn't married to her yet and he saw he couldn't get married, he said, I don't want her to get married to someone else. I'd rather she die or I die so I don't see her get married. Or if he did marry, if the story is that he did marry her, he said, I can't stand her anymore. Either I die or she has to go. So Amalei, Rava said to him, didn't I tell you not to pray for this matter? That's not the way a person prays for a shidduch. He does not say, this is the woman or this is the person. How do you know? You're a Navi, you're a prophet. You saw what Hashem said in Shemayim. You heard the bat call. What do you know? A person should pray, Hashem, please let me find my true zivug. Let me find my true shidduch. Let me find the person I'm supposed to be with. So we can build a bayit ne'eman be'Yisrael. Mordechai Eliyahu, wrote down in his biography, was not happy with people who do all sort of shemot, counting names, counting numbers, and saying who's supposed to be married for who. What do people know? How can you do all these counting? Well, you're magicians now, Nevi'im. And he would say, people go out, they see, they can work it out, they can build a bayit ne'eman b'Yisrael, they should have hatzlacha. Rav Moshe Feinstein said, after a person gets married, he has to believe 100% that this is the person I was supposed to marry. And he has to work to build a bayit ne'eman b'Yisrael with that person. And that is our job, Rabotai. And with this, I would love to wish every single one of you a Shabbat Shalom.